Hola, 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 yo soy Monet y tú estás viendo la vida como Monet. So I've been learning Spanish, or at least trying to, and it's been going as well as that introduction went. I took 4 years of French, and now I need to redirect my focuses towards learning Spanish. And so if you are a native Spanish speaker, I'm sorry that you had to witness that, but I'm trying. So not too long ago, Audible did a really huge sale where they discounted so many audiobooks. And usually when they do sales like that or discount books to $5, I never really see any that I'm interested in, and I might grab one or two, but I never do like a full haul or like shopping spree of audiobooks, especially because I use Libby so much more than I use Audible. And so I don't even really use my credits, and let alone purchase any outside of my credits. But the last sale that they did was so huge and massive that I racked up, and so today's video is going to be an audiobook haul. So the first audiobooks that I ended up grabbing was book 2 and 3 in the Lycanus trilogy. I read The Shadow of What Was Lost, which was book 1, earlier in the year on my channel, and I do have a vlog of me reading that where I read The Shadow of What Was Lost, The Sword of Kaigen, and The Way of Kings was also included in that vlog. And The Shadow of What Was Lost was one of the books that I enjoyed the most, but I only owned book 1. I did not own book 2 and 3. Book 2 is called An Echo of Things to Come, and book 3 is called The Light of All That Falls. And the audiobooks for them during the sale was like $4 or $5, if I remember correctly. It was so cheap. And the audiobooks are narrated by Michael Kramer, who is not my favorite narrator at all, but in terms of like my book buying restriction and paying attention to how much money I'm spending on books, and then also like my physical inventory of books, I just decided that for the price, and also I have so many things going on in my life that I am reading more books through audio lately, that it was just more feasible for me to get the audiobooks during the sale than for me to buy physical copies and try to read it myself. Then I grabbed the remaining books in the Unwind series. I also grabbed Unholy, Unsold, and Undivided. This is also by Neil Shusterman. In this series, I've only read book 1 so far. It's a YA, it's pretty old, but I enjoyed it. We are in a futuristic version of America where pro-choicers and pro-lifers have fought like this civil war, and they have come to the table and come up with a compromise. And in this compromise, if you are pregnant, you have to legally give birth to your child and raise them up until the ages of 13. Between the ages of 13 and 18, you can have your child legally unwound, in which case they go to like this butcher chop shop and they break the child down for parts. And because of the stipulations in this compromise, every single part of the child must be used in a transplant. The way that the world is set up is that more and more people decided not to donate organs even after they ended up passing away. And so this satisfied most people. It satisfied the pro-choicers who had the ability to still have their child unwound. It satisfied the pro-lifers who essentially, if you think about it, the child is not really being aborted, and when they are unwound, they're going to the purposes of someone who really, really needs them. And it also satisfied doctors and medical physicians who now had an abundance of organs to give to those that were in need, so that the organ transplant list was not excessively long. That is essentially the stage that is set up for when we go into book 1. And so we're following multiple characters. One of our main characters' name is Connor, and he is kind of like a troublesome kid. He has behavioral issues, a little bit of anger issues, and the parents are at the point where they're just like, they don't want to deal with it anymore. And so they decide to have him unwound because he is a troubled teen, and he runs away. And as long as he can stay under the radar until he's 18, he will be able to avoid being unwound. He comes into contact with other runaways who are also trying to avoid being unwound, and each character is vastly different. When I started this book, it was really just like a palate cleanser. I enjoyed Neil Shusterman's writing, and I thought that the synopsis was very interesting. But one of my favorite series growing up, my first actual series that I remember falling in love with, and it made me such a devout lover of reading, was Among the Hidden. And so Unwind had so many similarities to Among the Hidden, which I actually want to go back and reread soon because I just have this fun and fond nostalgic feeling when I think about it. But in Among the Hidden, there is a requirement for how many children a family is allowed to have, and so families that do have more children than what is allotted, they essentially hide them. And throughout the series, these hidden children come and they start this entire rebellion, and it seems like that's where we're going with the unwind, and the little girl in me is just so excited to finish these books. So I used this sale to grab as many books in a series as I could, because if I can, I like to keep it very consistent in terms of like, if I start a series physically, I want to finish it physically, or if I start it via audiobook, I'd like to finish via audiobook. But for the next series I grabbed, I don't own any physical copies at all, and I was planning to borrow them all from my library when I decided to read them, but during the sale each book was $4.50, and so I grabbed all 10 of Malazan Book of the Fallen series. That is Gardens of the Moon, Dead House Gates, Memory of Ice, House of Chains, Midnight Tides, The Bone Hunters, Reaper's Gale, Toll the Hounds, Dust of Dreams, and The Crippled Gods. So yeah, I definitely grabbed all 10 books in the series, and I am floored that I was able to get each book for $4, because of all the reviews that I've heard is that the series is like epic high fantasy, extremely hard to follow. For the first 2 books, people have told me that they didn't know what the hell was going on, and it sounds like the first Law trilogy all over again. It is just so many moving pieces and plot points within the story that it gets really hard to follow. There's so many videos of like people explaining things and connecting things, giving you an outline, and it's not so much intimidating to me because I am, you know, I'm a fantasy girl, okay? You can't scare me. But at the same time, some of the most staunch fantasy readers I know who read more fantasy than me have said the same things about the series. And so I think that's what took me so long to get them from the library, because I was not in a place where I could just run through it and be able to check out all the books at one time and keep them with me so that I could like refer back and things like that. And so I think that now having the audiobooks is essentially better because I own them and I will be able to go back and like listen again to whatever I need to keep me going with the story. And so I feel more prepared to go into the series, and it's one that I plan to marathon, yes, marathon 10 books later in this year. Another book that I managed to grab for $4 is going to be Deathless by Catherine Valenti, and this is like such a beloved book, and I've heard it compared and recommended in combination with The Bear and the Nightingale relentlessly, and I truly love The Bear and the Nightingale, the whole series. It was a highlight of my Christmas. I got to read it when it was snowing outside. I sat by my fireplace, and I really enjoyed the exploration of Russian folklore, and every single website, video, or blog I went on to find other books similar to The Bear and the Nightingale all had Deathless by Catherine Valenti. But because of my book buying restriction, I've been trying to find it high and low at my library or on Libby, and it was just not available. And I don't think that I could have gotten the ebook version of this either. And so when I seen it on sale for $4, I snatched it up. Because of how hard it was to find it, my excitement around reading it just got higher and higher. So I did grab some books by J Sullivan. The first one that I grabbed was The Death of Dulgath, and the second one I grabbed was The Disappearance of Winter's Daughter. This is a part of the Rhaenyra Chronicles, which are standalone novels that follow Hadrian and Royce before we see them in the Rhaenyra Revelations. Last year when I read the Rhaenyra Revelations, it definitely took the top spot for my all-time favorite fantasy series. Although The Bear and the Nightingale did give it a run for its money, it was a very tough choice, but I read some of my favorite fantasies ever last year, and I'm hoping to get some of that experience this year again. Hasn't been going that well, but let's hope that it picks up by the time the end of the year rolls around. So I haven't started the Rhaenyra Chronicles yet, and I read the Rhaenyra Revelations physically and through the audiobook. I really enjoyed the narration of Tim Gerard Reynolds, but there was just something about the Rhaenyra Revelations that made me want to read it physically. I wanted it to be a slower and like more immersive experience, and I wanted to annotate as I read along. And so I was torn while reading the series between listening to the audiobooks and reading it physically, and I ended up deciding to listen to book 2 only through audiobook. And while I did enjoy the audiobook a lot, I went back and read it again physically. And so I'm hoping with the Rhaenyra Chronicles, since they're short and fun standalones, I'll be able to listen to the audiobook versions of those. But when I read Legends of the First Empire, I plan to read those physically. And so with this way, I'll be able to listen to the narration of J Sullivan's work by a narrator that I really enjoy, but also reading something completely separate in the physical version by the same author and enjoying both of them in the mediums in which I read. And then the last book that I grabbed was The Open Veins of Latin America. This is a nonfiction. I'm not sure what year it came out, but I'm pretty sure it's a rather old older nonfiction, but it explores the history and exploitation of Latin America. So I was reading it physically as a buddy read, but it got completely derailed. And we started with like the conquistadors, but when I was doing my class schedule for this upcoming fall, there's a course that was available specifically on international policies in Latin America. And that's something that I want to focus on. That's why I'm learning some Spanish right now. I decided to pause the reading of this book because I wanted to read it in junction with my Latin America course so that I can have some historical context and also get the views of like what I'm learning in the course from an own voices writer. And when I seen the audiobook for this one I believe was $8, but I just was like, oh, this is perfect. Like it's all coming together. And those are all of the audiobooks that I grabbed during Audible's last amazing sale. I would love for them to do another sale like this later on in the year because there are some more series that I would love to just grab and just listen to in bulk and not have to worry about owning 10 books, 10 physical copies of a book and taking up space on my shelves. I'm finding that unless it's a favorite series of mine, if it is higher than a trilogy or a quartet, I'm usually apprehensive about purchasing all the books in the series except for the Fever books, okay? That is an exception. The one exception I will make, I will own all 10 and 11 books in the Fever series. But for everything else, I prefer for it to just be a trilogy or quartet if I'm going to own them, or for it to be an all-time favorite. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to start kicking people out of their bedroom so I can fit my books in there. Thank you for making it to the end of my video, and I will see you guys next time.